our current administration doesn't have a climate plan. Our future is really on the ballot this year, and if you appreciate clean air now more than ever, now is the time to make sure you're registered to vote.
Hey guys, welcome back to Adventures of Keek. So I wanted to start a series interviewing the people in my life who are in either environmental or sustainability jobs or have studied environmental studies, etc. because I know quite a few people who also really care about these things, would have some really interesting insight for everyone. I am excited to catch up with people that I haven't talked to in a long time, and so for today we're talking to my old housemate Jackie from college, and we met freshman year of college in the dorms, living in the environmental hall actually, and she works currently for the county of San Mateo in sustainability work. So we're gonna talk about that, hear all about government stuff because I don't know anything about that, and I think a lot of people might not have a general knowledge. I do not, so can't wait to become more informed, which will definitely be useful as a future voter. For some reason I can't figure out why my audio for my headphones is horrible, but I apologize for that, and I promise it'll be better next time. Hey Jackie!
How have you been?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right, all things considered.
Thanks so much for chatting with me. I'm excited to catch up a little bit.
Yeah, me too. It's been a while.
So we first met because we lived in the environmental hall of our dorms. So shout out to E-Hall fam. Yeah. So when did you first get interested in environmental studies or sustainability work that led you to wanting to be in that dorm or do environmental work?
Yeah, so interestingly, this happened in the 7th grade for me. I'm not sure if you remember the documentary called The Inconvenient Truth, where Al Gore basically rang the alarm about climate change. And it was really the first time I learned about the Keeling curve, the curve about our carbon dioxide emissions that were increasing. And I ran out of the movie theater halfway crying because I couldn't comprehend, how had I not known about this before? Why isn't everybody talking about it all the time? And basically we're doomed. And my mom followed me out of the theater, and she consoled me, and she finally said, yeah, this is a really big problem, but there's something that you can do about it, and you can dedicate your life to working on this. And so I didn't know that you could study the environment until that time. When I moved from Taiwan, I was living in Taiwan at the time, I moved to California. In my high school, I think senior year, I took AP Environmental Science, which
I did
really
too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, shout out Apes, Miss Reagan Fuss.
Yeah, Apes.
That's her name. I hope you're well. That just kind of opened my eyes, and I said, okay, this is what I want to do. And so when, senior year, when you're like, what am I going to study? Most of us were like, I am not going to be a doctor. That I studied AP Environmental Science, and I applied to all the universities that had those types of programs. And so I landed at UCSB in Santa Barbara, where I met you. And of course, when they were asking us to sign up for our living situation, I was like, environmental hall, of course. During my time in college, I took an internship working on tobacco prevention with the county of Santa Barbara. I'm sure you remember that. Mm-hmm. And I really liked it because I was doing a lot of outreach. So basically the term that the government uses to do marketing, but basically it's just really going out to the community and sharing information or giving services. And so I really liked doing that. I really liked talking to people, especially we had a really large Latinx community in Santa Barbara. And so really using my Spanish skills too has proven valuable these days. And then so I said, I really like this. I want to do this, but for sustainability, not necessarily for tobacco prevention, which is also a super intractable problem that we need to solve. But, which also many of the tactics that were used in like the tobacco industry are the same kind of tactics that are being used by, for example, the fossil fuel industry to
interesting.
Misinformation. If you want to learn more about that, you should read the book Merchants of Doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, so then I took an internship with the County of San Mateo in their Office of Sustainability, and I started as an intern and have kind of worked my way up across many areas of focus. So whether that's teaching kids about compost or researching policies for our climate action plan, I've really kind of learned all aspects of sustainability there. I loved it so much that I looked into my own city where I live in the city of San Mateo. So I work for the County of San Mateo. I looked into the city of San Mateo and noticed that they have a Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission. So I applied for that as a volunteer to advise our city council on sustainability matters. And that's been a really great experience to know that I, as a resident, can also help inform our local policies too.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So I mainly focused on government agencies, but I did also apply to some private companies for example, like sustainability coordinator positions, sustainability, like those positions that would help advise private companies how to shift to more sustainable practices. For example, like a cleaning company. I applied to a cleaning product company that would help advise them on how to make their operations more sustainable.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Green jobs, the more we promote policies that focus on sustainability, the more green jobs there will be. And so more people can be working on these issues.
Yeah, so I feel like even with my limited knowledge on climate change facts and people's general limited knowledge, there's a lot of anxiety about the future and climate change, and some people call it eco-anxiety. And so how do you experience that in being in a position where you're very exposed to the truth of what's going on?
Yeah. Wow, that's a really great question. I think that because I know that so many people are working on this, that it makes me hopeful that we're making really good progress. And there are rules and laws in place that force us to do that. And so the more that we can promote those policies, we need to be doing that. But the way that my, I guess you could say, eco-anxiety shows up the most is when we're actually experiencing some of these impacts. Mm-hmm. Wildfires. You only really fully think about it or fully feel it when the sky is orange, or when you have to stay inside. That type of anxiety, translates first into grief for what's being lost, or the trees that are burning, or people's lives and livelihoods. But then it goes, once the fire season ends and goes away, a lot of people stop thinking about it and say, we'll deal with it next year. We need to be acting as if this was the situation every day. We need to be acting and making decisions like our world is on fire, because it literally is.
Wow. Yeah.
And that can be really daunting, but the more progress we make now, the better shape we'll be in the decades to come.
Yeah,
it is
definitely.
Eco-anxiety and eco-grief, like I call it climate grief, are so real and is happening to so many people right now in our country and outside of our country too.
It seems like every day there's a new disaster that we hear about.
And one thing also is when you're scrolling through news headlines, and I feel like we get so numb to scrolling and it's just something being lost, another species being extinct. But
yeah, we're desensitized because it's always there.
Really stopping and letting it sink in. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean for the people who are experiencing this, and what does that mean for the area? And just then the more we can reflect on it, I think the better.
Yeah, that's a good point. Have you watched Zac Efron's show on Netflix?
No, I haven't.
It's kind of like him and this health slash environmental dude go around the world kind of looking at good examples of people living off the earth or with good sustainable practices in other countries, and kind of like, wow, if everyone did this, then we'd be fine. They went to, I think, Puerto Rico, and like heavily flooded areas that people are impacted every year by natural disasters, and seeing people's stories, it definitely helped like put it into perspective.
Yeah.
And I was hoping, since it was Zac Efron, I think a lot of people watched it, so I'm like, okay, make it mainstream.
Yeah, I guess you have to get Zac Efron to on the screen for people to care sometimes.
Yeah.
This is fun.
Yeah, I like it. You're so cool.
Oh my gosh. Beautiful.
Going back a little bit, what is the like title of your job?
Yeah, so I'm a sustainability specialist, basically helping to implement policies and programs related to a variety of sustainability topics, whether that's housing policy, yes, it's related, transportation, energy, water, things like that, waste reduction, so that our county is more sustainable as a whole.
I'm curious if you know, do a lot of other counties have this level of people working on these environmental issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of counties and cities do have positions like a sustainability analyst. And you can literally go on your city's website and look up who is the sustainability analyst who prepares our climate action plan in our city, for example.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
But I will say that our county has really invested in sustainability, and that's why we have a department of about 40 people in our county working on sustainability issues. But I would say that a majority of counties in California have a sustainability department or a sustainability positions that help further that work, because every jurisdiction in California, it's mandated that we have a climate action plan.
So what's the difference between the county versus city?
I love that you asked that question. Because I'll be talking to people our age who are like software engineers and like these, really capable people, but when it comes to like government or like local government,
yeah,
it's like
no, yeah.
But there's a reason for that, and it's whether I know I wasn't maybe paying attention in our government class in high school. I don't know what it is, but it's actually so important, and it directly impacts our lives to know what is the difference between a city and a county. You think about it in like terms of levels of government. So you have your city, you have your county, you have your state, and you have your federal country, basically.
Yeah.
And so the county is an area of many cities. So for example, in the county of San Mateo, we have 20 cities. So you'll look at the map and there are 20 cities, but there's areas that are kind of, not part of a city. So those are part of the county. And so the county operates kind of as, the 21st city in our county. And it oversees all of those areas, which are called unincorporated areas.
Oh, okay. That's where I grew up, in an unincorporated area, and I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. So it basically means that when, something is wrong on your street or there's a pothole or something, the person you call is in a city, it's your county. Yeah.
Interesting. So then in terms of like the two positions you worked in, so the county level was more area and people.
So at the county, I'm working in their Department of Sustainability, and that's like my full-time job. And that's still what I work on. And that is really has two roles, one of which is overseeing our unincorporated areas and promoting sustainability in those areas. But also, the 20 cities in our county look to us if we're creating a climate adaptation strategy to make sure that we're prepared for the impacts of climate change, those 20 cities are going to want to work together and to plan at a county level, at a larger level, to make sure that those efforts are coordinated. And then at the city level, I'm basically a volunteer. So all cities have these like advisory commissions that advise their elected city council members on policies. And I sit on a commission of 5 members. I'm one of 5 that have been appointed. Basically apply and you're appointed to help advise your elected members of your city.
Given all of the importance of political issues these days, I briefly went through a time where I was like, maybe I should get into politics. And it seemed like one thing is like being able to be kind of a consultant and an advisor. So that's really cool that that's something you're actually doing.
And also, it's been a little bit nerve-wracking as the youngest person by a lot on those
wow.
A lot of those city commissions tend to skew towards older residents, towards white residents, and so having diversity on those commissions and both age and race and socioeconomic status, like having a really diverse advisory bodies will help really make our decisions a lot better and will help serve more people and all the people that are in the communities.
You're like a mini San Mateo AOC for sustainability.
The area I'm working in right now is housing policy, and a lot of people ask me, well, housing policy, how's that even related to sustainability?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, the more we can promote policies that allow everybody to live in an area, no matter how much money you make, the less people are going to be commuting from cheaper areas of our Bay Area to come to work in San Mateo County. And so you're really reducing those car emissions and allowing anybody who wants to live in your county to be able to and to have housing options that support all income levels. And I will say that one of my kind of passion projects within our office that I have kind of like taken on, when I started as an intern, I noticed that our social media presence was super lacking, and I have been able to grow our 80 Twitter followers to 3 different platforms, and now a couple hundred followers on Instagram too. So
nice.
Out at SustainSMC.
I'll give it a follow. That's cool. What is your favorite part of the job?
Speaking with community members. When you're doing policy work, you can get like really deep into the weeds and can maybe lose sight of, all right, who is this for? Or like, why are we doing this? And so I really appreciate that some of my job is some of that work, but also is heavily on like talking to people. And we go outside of grocery stores and ask people these like open-ended questions. People on their day-to-day are not thinking about housing policies, but you're asking questions like, how are you and the people you love are affected by our housing situation, our current housing situation, unaffordability or unavailability of affordable housing. And so the city then can make decisions about what policies they're going to adopt or what policies they're going to take away or repeal. So
that sounds like really important work to have everyone's voice heard.
Exactly. We went to Chavez Market near my neighborhood. We did kind of a Spanish-focused pop-up event, and it's just really fulfilling and gratifying to be able to get folks to really envision a better future. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, sometimes in my work I get so, we don't talk to the people that we're going to one day affect down the line every day. I think that is really cool to have, would be very motivating.
It is super motivating.
Has your job affected your perspective on sustainability and climate change in any way?
100%.
Yeah.
Through a variety of ways, but I'm going to talk about just one of them. And that is the importance of planning for the future impacts of climate change. So both mitigation, reducing our climate emissions before they even happen, but also adaptation. And so once we do start to experience the climate impacts of wildfire or sea level rise or extreme heat, how are our cities and counties and as a state are we going to be prepared for those climate impacts? Remember when I was talking about how are those cities going to talk together about these things? You know, if you plan for flooding in one city, you're going to have to plan for flooding in the neighboring city because water doesn't care about jurisdictional boundaries. Yeah, I think it has really made me think about we're moving away from just talking about reducing our emissions, and we're actually really starting to plan for the impacts that are inevitable and are already baked into the system. And so, yeah, it's a lot. It's heavy, but it makes me hopeful that, you know, there are people thinking about this and there are people planning for it. And one of the fastest growing sectors of our job economy is adaptation planning and planning for those impacts.
So it seems like with a lot of injustices and issues going around on the news and on social media, everything seems to be pointing to the importance of voting. How can I make a difference as a voter? How can the average person get to that point where they're like, okay, I know what to do to vote for the planet or whatever?
I would say that where I feel like I can make the most different, or my entry point into the policy process, is my local government. What that means is really looking up, just going to your city website and really looking at first, who are your elected officials? Like, who make decisions for you? I think a lot of times our attention is focused on our federal elections, which happen every 4 years, and yes, they're very important. But who are the people that meet every 2 weeks to make decisions about what our roads look like? And so really getting to know your elected members. Like, you could set up a meeting with them and say, hey, I want to know about what your thoughts are on climate change. Boom. That's it. That's your meeting. Just asking that question. And I think that that's a really important place to start. So your elected leaders. As a voter and as a non-voter, because there are residents of our country that may not necessarily have the privilege of voting, is knowing that your decision makers are very accessible to you. And if they're not, that's a problem. So making sure that we know who our local elected leaders are, who represents us at the state level. So who is your state senator and who's your state assembly member? Because remember that our states have those two levels of government too, right? They have the House of Representatives and the Senate too. Yeah, so not only voting for candidates that support your views, but also reading up on the policies that are on the ballots that align with your vision of the future. And for example, the California state legislature, which means like the assembly members, were considering a bill this year that would extend producer responsibility. And what I mean by that is like plastic producers. They would have to find a way, make a plan for, okay, we put all these like plastic packaging where you're going to receive your makeup in.
Yeah.
This is our plan to recycle it. I don't think that it passed. Don't quote me on that.
Oh, sad.
One thing I did was like I called my, you can Google like who represents me in the California State Assembly, find their phone number, and you call their office and you say, hi, I am Jackie and I live in the city of San Mateo, and I want to encourage my representative to vote yes for this bill, for example.
So easy. They always say like, call your representative, whatever, but it's like, what does that look like? So I like that example.
Yeah. The second place is looking at your city or county's climate action plan. What is your city doing to address climate change? So those happen every, I think like 5 years, they make a plan and then they start to make small actions. Like this year, we're going to promote electric vehicles and to improve our bike infrastructure so people are not getting in their cars as much. Or this year, we're going to promote gray water systems to really recycle our water usage or get composting in multifamily buildings. So knowing what your city is doing for that and pushing for policies that you see that may not be on there is really important. By doing that, you will then understand how your city fits into the ecosystem of other local governments. For example, your city and then your county and your state. The state makes a policy and then the local governments have to implement it. They either have to roll out a program to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045, for example, if that's a policy that they make. That is a policy of the County of San Mateo, or a commitment that we've made. And two more things. I swear they're quick. One of which is follow your local government on social media channels. Look at their Facebook.
Okay. Yeah, I follow my rep on Instagram because she's amazing.
but yeah, definitely really important. Both your, like you said, your reps, your elected representatives, and also like your government agency, the city of LA. It gives you a good sense of like what's top of mind for your area. And then the second thing and last thing I was going to say is that our current administration doesn't have a climate plan. And so what that means is that at the federal level, there's no coordinated effort to plan for reducing our emissions or plan for the impacts of climate change. Our future is really on the ballot this year. And so by voting for candidates that do have climate action plans, have a strategy for how they plan to work within the United States and coordinate with other governments, international governments, is extremely important. And if you appreciate clean air now more than ever, for example, now is the time to make sure you're registered to vote. Literally Google, how do I register to vote? You can, for example, write postcards to people who aren't registered to vote. There are so many things you can do to volunteer in this election, and kids ask you what you did to make sure that you secured a better future for them. You want to make sure you have something to say.
That's very true. Yeah, it's so crazy to think that the current administration has no plan when we're all seeing direct effects and there's no plan moving forward. That's shocking, but also not surprising.
Yeah.
How has the current administration affected your job, if at all, or the things that you work on?
I would say that it hasn't. And I think that that's the benefit of local government. Our system of government was designed so that you can't make change fast. There are checks and balances in place so that any large changes, like, for example, impacting the local government jobs, for example, would take a really long time. And so there are benefits and drawbacks of having a system that takes forever to make change. An administration that comes in for 4 years can't necessarily remove all the progress that we've made on a local level to address climate change. And so it really hasn't. But at the federal level, for example, the Environmental Protection Agency, many positions that were doing national climate research have been cut. Funding for research at the federal level at the United States has been cut. You're not allowed to use the word climate change or climate in any of if you're working for the federal government, Environmental Protection Agency, you're not allowed to use those.
Wow.
From what I've heard, that people who work for the EPA. And so it is very important that we make sure that we have people at a national level that support, that believe in climate change and believe that climate change is not a hoax, but that really support, which is why I'm getting my master's in public administration to really dive deeper to local government administration.
Wow, that's awesome. So I think we'll do a last 3 quick fire questions.
Okay.
But you can go longer if you want. What's a way that you show your care for the environment and the way that you live?
Composting is something that I was doing in my previous where I was living, but now I live in a multifamily building and we don't have composting. So I'm trying to get my property manager to get us composting service. And so right now I'm working on building my worm bin.
Oh, nice.
So that I can compost like at home instead of relying on our commercial composting system.
Oh, I'd be curious to know how that goes. I've never tried. What's something that gives you hope for a better world in future, either related to your job or not?
People who are younger and way cooler than me that care so much about our future and are doing really amazing things.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the older generations would say the same about us and the younger generations too.
I agree.
Is there anything else that you want to say, tell the people that we haven't shared already?
I would say amazing things are happening right in your neighborhood, and there's really awesome people that are working on things that you may really care about. And the more we connect, and even in this physically distanced world, we can still connect and build relationships with the people right in your backyard and in your neighborhood that care about the same things as you, because the more we know our neighbors, the more resilient we'll be into the future, both in the face of disaster. The more cohesive our communities are, the better we'll be able to respond and bounce back. So get to know your neighbors, get to know the people around you, and you'll find a lot of hope right where you are.
That's beautiful. All right. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thanks, Key. It was so good to talk to you.
You too. All right. Thanks again to Jackie for joining me in this conversation and sharing all about your work. And it's really nice to hear from people directly involved in combating these issues in climate change and people who have hope for our future, because despite all of the negativity we see, there's a lot to be hopeful for and a lot of good and progress happening that is not all over the media. Also, we forgot to talk about this that we talked about earlier. As you saw in a previous video, I have done some work with Keep Nature Wild and doing trash cleanups, and along the same lines, it's California Coastal Cleanup Month, which I guess is usually a day, but it's spread out over a month this time. So get outside if you can and bring a trash bag. I think the idea is to encourage people to clean up our coasts and our local spaces. The theme is protect your happy place, so targeting the areas right around us, cleaning up in your local areas. If you go on a walk normally, then that's perfect. I'll also put the link below for more information on that. So apparently what happens is you clean up every Saturday in September. Some places have, I guess, special events, virtual programs coordinating these cleanups, but you just do your cleanup either way, alone or with a group. There's a survey. If you take this survey, you get a coupon for free chips and guac from Rubio's. Okay, I'm gonna do this because I love Rubio's. I can do better in cleaning up my local areas when I see trash and stuff, but I love Rubio's, so love it. We love Rubio's. Stay tuned for more videos like this, more interviews, and if you enjoyed, please like and subscribe and check out the links below that Jackie talked about.